We're approaching that part of the season where if there is something going on, it'll be milked for clicks because usually there's not a lot else going on because we're about to hit the summer break. But thinking about it, last year we didn't just have a silly season, we had a silly year. Hamilton announcing he was off to Ferrari kicked all that off. Then we had Adrian Newey quitting Red Bull. Newey then joined Aston Martin after rumours that he was going to join Lewis at Ferrari, which led to Newey, Lewis and the news being the best video title I'll ever come up with, and I'll never achieve those highs again. Then we had the beginning of the Red Bull downfall because Newey had left and the botched Miami upgrades led to where we are now. This year we've had the Christian Horner sacking, and that's pretty much it in terms of massive news. And I talked about Horner's sacking when it happened. It came just after the British Grand Prix when the news came out of nowhere, but at the same time, we weren't exactly surprised. It ended a long period in Red Bull's history where the car seemingly fell off a cliff, and several key personnel had all buggered off. After that, the vibe around the team was, well, not great. If anything, it was incredibly toxic. With rumours going around that it was some sort of power play going on with the two sides of Red Bull. The Thais wanted Horner to stay, and the Austrians wanted him gone. And in the middle was Verstappen, who was just getting bored with everything. And just before Horner was kicked to the curb, the rumours were ramping up that Max could be doing the exact same thing that Newey and Wheatley had done before him. So why was all this a massive deal? Well, like most of the top drivers, Max had a clause in his contract that meant that if the car was rubbish, he was allowed to activate the clause and that would give him the opportunity to seek out a new drive. Sebastian Vettel activated a similar clause in his contract during the 2014 season, which was, funnily enough, a season that was going incredibly badly after winning 4 straight championships. And Vettel was Red Bull's golden goose at the time. The difference is, Red Bull hasn't got anybody lined up to replace Verstappen. Losing Vettel meant that Ricciardo was going to be the new guy. Who does Red Bull have to replace Verstappen? Nobody, really. And that was supposedly enough to get Red Bull to pull their fingers out. You might have seen the pictures at the British Grand Prix, or it might have been the Austrian Grand Prix, of Max sitting at a table with the glummest look on his face. A look of a man who did not want to be there. Surrounded by all of these journalists that were circling around him like that meme of the... Actually, no, not that meme. Circling around him like vultures. Yeah, we'll call it that. Media vultures. But it was funny though, that look on his face, perfectly captured. He was not liking the attention that these rumours were causing. But when you're the top guy on the grid and the 4-time champion with your team imploding around you and there's an opportunity to move on, well, it's going to cause speculation, isn't it? Because just after the British Grand Prix, Max's jet was seen on flight radar going up to Sardinia or Corsica or somewhere in the Mediterranean where Toto Wolff's boat and jet just happened to be. Then, the day after Horner's sacking, that jet was seen heading to and landing in England. Now, I don't follow the Red Bull subreddit. I don't follow any subreddits, but I still get alerts from that Red Bull subreddit for some reason, and well, occasionally I do click on it and have a flick through. People on there were tracking Max's jet and trying to piece things together like Formula 1's equivalent to Swifties. Basically, Max was in England because he was visiting the Red Bull factory the day after Horner was sacked. There was nothing to see there. But it is what it is when these things start coming out. But it was one of those moments where you never knew what to believe because, well, nothing can be trusted anymore. And that's quite sad. Because some of these MV1 stan accounts on Twitter were saying that this particular guy at the Dutch Telegraph had said that Max had already signed the contracts with Mercedes and the announcement would come during the week after Horner's sacking, with those posts being made after Horner was booted. And guess what? That announcement never came. Then, the Germans were saying that Max was staying, the Austrians were saying that Max was staying, and the British were saying nobody knows what the hell is going on, and it turned out that Max was staying at Red Bull. It reminds me of a joke that Daniel Sloss once told. People will go, "The news is biased and it's lying to you, you're always being lied to." Oh yeah? Who said that? The other news! So why was Max being linked so hard to Mercedes? There's been the rumour in the last 18 months or so around the time Red Bull started their fall off, that with these new regulations that are coming in for 2026, Mercedes has cracked the engine formula. With the deletion of the MGU-H and the splitting of the engine and battery 50-50, there have been some concerns, primarily from Christian Horner, that the drivers will be running out of battery during the lap and they might have to resort to doing things like downshifting on straights to charge it back up again. This has been solved through the FIA introducing something called ramp rates, which will decrease the amount of deployment as the speeds increase. And these ramp rates will be increased at circuits like Monza, Baku, maybe Spa as well, so, tracks that have high speed, mostly full throttle sections, while at Hungary, where they'll be racing this weekend, the ramp rates will be less aggressive. Despite this though, as mentioned in the video about the 2026 aero rules that I did on Wednesday, it's still being claimed that Mercedes have found a way to efficiently deploy the electrical energy, and as a result, will have a bit more headroom. And with the next set of regulations being called an engine formula, well, you do the maths. So the rumours, and you might want to do a shot every time I say rumours but your health will suffer, is that Mercedes will have the best car next year. But it's no guarantee, obviously. Mercedes could still make a total hash of the aero side of things, or maybe Aston Martin will have the best car next year. Or Williams, or McLaren might continue with what they've got in 2026, much like Mercedes continued their dominance from 2016 into 2017. We're not going to see what the pecking order is until the first race of the season, so this left Max with a choice to make. Moving was an option, but then Horner was sacked just after the British Grand Prix, which was seen as being a Hail Mary to get Verstappen to stay, and it looked like it worked. But at the same time, maybe Max was going to stay either way, we just don't know. But like mentioned, that brought risks with it. What if the Mercedes was rubbish and it was Red Bull that got things right? That would have made Max look really unlucky, or stupid, depending on what articles you read. But in the video I did about Horner's sacking, I said that 2026 would be an opportunity to see who was producing the best car, and then talk to that team during 2026 if the current trend with Red Bull continues. Max is under contract until 2028, and after that his future is a little uncertain. Max has said a few times that he doesn't want to stay in Formula 1 forever, and the end of his contract could see him depart for endurance racing or do something else entirely, like do Le Mans with his dad, the Spa 24, the Nürburgring 24, or focus on his sim to real life racing team or whatever it is he wants to do, as well as be with his family. But by taking a year in a potentially bad car, he can then speak to other teams and that would allow him to simply move into something better if the next Red Bull is bad. Someone online called it the Senna approach. Senna staying at McLaren through 1990 to then move to Williams in 1994 when he knew that he would have a good car under him. Because, like Senna, Max is a serial winner. Nothing less than a race winning car or potential championship winning car is acceptable. But if Mercedes does indeed have the best car by a country mile next season, and George and Kimi do what McLaren are doing this season, then that opens up another question. Will Mercedes still want Verstappen if the current drivers are doing the business? Especially when those current drivers are Mercedes Academy products. If Mercedes does well enough and George and Kimi are doing the job, then Aston Martin seems the most logical decision. Alonso's coming to the end of his career, Newey's already there, but that's just an idea. It doesn't mean that that's the way it's going to go, it's just a possibility, it's an option for the future in these weird times. But it depends on how things go with the pecking order really, but at least the rumours and speculation can go back in their box for another 12 months or so. But it's not just the rumours and speculation surrounding Max that's been going on, because in the lead up to the British Grand Prix and then into the Belgian Grand Prix, there were rumours and speculation coming out of Italy that Frederic Vasseur's head would be on the chopping block and not just Christian Horner's. And those rumours and speculation never came to anything either, because it was announced earlier this week that Frederic Vasseur, the Ferrari boss, has put pen to paper on a multi-year deal, ending the clickbait headlines that he would be another team boss to be fired, just like Christian Horner. Although the Vasseur stuff has been floating around before the Horner sacking. Ferrari currently sits second in the Constructors' Championship, ahead of Mercedes and Red Bull, with Mercedes finding a blip in their form recently. They have done something to the car and made a U-turn on the Spa upgrades for the Hungarian Grand Prix this weekend, but Antonelli's form has dipped since Canada, and George might have been more unsettled by the Verstappen rumours than he let on. But either way, Ferrari is still 286 points behind McLaren. But the slow move forward they've made recently has been noticeable, but it's still not enough. Leclerc is on a run of 4 podiums in 6 races or something along those lines, which is great, but they're still a long way behind McLaren. Winning the championship is going to be borderline impossible for Ferrari this season, but they can still solidify the best of the rest status. Ferrari has been suffering with issues related to ride height, which saw Hamilton disqualified from the Chinese Grand Prix after his sprint race victory, the only time a Ferrari has finished higher than third all year. But, you know, sprint races don't count. Now they've got a new floor and a revised suspension setup that means they're not having to be as ultra conservative with the ride height settings and can optimise the car a bit better. But, like mentioned, they're still a long way behind McLaren. It's hoped from the summer break onwards and through the second part of the season, Ferrari can get even closer to McLaren and get themselves well in between McLaren and Verstappen, because, well, Tsunoda's not able to do the business at the minute, is he, because of the way that car is set up. But Hamilton and Leclerc and Vasseur aren't getting ahead of themselves just yet. Vasseur's contract extension length hasn't been revealed, just that it's a multi-year deal. But there are still some problems going on at Ferrari, like between the drivers and the engineers, with it seeming that calls from the drivers are being ignored because the data is saying something else, and Leclerc giving his engineer a calm lecture at Spa about talking to him and telling him to do stuff when he couldn't see a thing in front of him. If Ferrari can listen to its drivers a bit more and sort out the strategy side of things, then there's a chance. But until then, the cycle continues. Underneath the race's article about the new contract given to Vasseur, someone mentioned that back in the 90s, Jean Todt was under similar pressure to be sacked, with the Italian media being what it is when it comes to all things Ferrari. Bias, I think, is the operative word. It's not just British, it happens everywhere. Who would have thought? But anyway, Todt was in a similar position because the Italians thought that the turnaround wasn't happening fast enough. Schumacher, Todt, everybody else, where are the titles? But apparently, Schumacher exerted his influence and said that if Todt went, he went. And Todt stayed. Then look what happened. Although whether Hamilton had anything to do with this is highly unlikely. Hamilton is coming towards the end of his career while Schumacher was about to enter the prime of his career. And because Schumacher was the best driver on the grid at that time, he had a much bigger stick to wave around. And Ferrari had even said that these rumours and claims from the Italian media were all bollocks, and Vasseur himself went on a bit of a rant, calling the rumours and those in the Italian media that were stirring the pot offensive. Vasseur did joke in an interview that if he carried on talking about it, he'd get in trouble with the FIA. But he did say it's some Italian media, not all the Italian media, and it's not about him because he could manage it all, it was about the people of the team more than him, basically saying that the team was going to be unsettled by these rumours. Vasseur also said, each time you have a distraction or issue internally, you are losing your focus and the path of the season. The UK teams are more on their own and a bit more focused on what they're doing, and the best example of that is McLaren. In 2022 they had a very harsh season. They were at the back, but they were focused. They worked on their own team and improved step by step. It's what every team wants to do, and the most important part is being able to do your own job. Ross Brawn in his book wrote about the daily meetings that they would have at Ferrari. Ross would go into the meeting room and on the table would be the day's newspapers, and they would all sit there and go through and see what the Italian media was saying about Ferrari. Needless to say, Brawn got rid of those meetings incredibly quickly. They could then work with no sort of looking over their shoulder from the Italian media, and look what they achieved. See, all I've got stuck in my head now is that scene from The Simpsons where Fat Tony knocks on the Simpsons' door to ask where his money is. I think it's the episode where Marge gets into making pretzels or something along those lines. The Italian media is basically that scene. Could we have a title now? The answer is no. I'm afraid I must insist. You see, our editors, they have been most vocal about the subject of Schumacher winning the championship. Where is the championship? When are you going to win the championship? Are you going to win the championship today? And so on. So please, the championship. I don't know what that voice was, it was a little bit of Fat Tony, a little bit of Garrick. If Vasseur had been sacked, it would have been Ferrari's 6th team principal since 2008. Domenicali between 2008 and 2014, Mattiacci in 2014, Arriva Bene between 15 and 18, Bonotto between 18 and 22, and Vasseur taking over in 2022. Another team principal wouldn't change much, especially given that Ferrari has only had one constructors title in 2008 to show for all of these changes. Ferrari is approaching another 20 years without a driver's title, like the time spent between Scheckter in 1979 and the Michael in 2000. Okay, that's 21, but still 20 is a nice round number. So if Ferrari can somehow get more in a we don't care what you say kind of mentality, then maybe there's another chance at a purple patch. and as I've said before, those Schumacher years were the exception, not the norm. But at least we've got two of the biggest clickbait generation stories out of the way, and they can go back into their boxes. Although that said, through 2026 you just know that the Max to Mercedes stuff is going to come out again. So what happens now? Well, Russell will be getting something done about a new contract, and might look for a multi-year deal with some extra guarantees, just in case. For Antonelli though, things might be a bit different. He might only be put on a 1-year deal, with there being whispers that he could be loaned out to Alpine for a year or so, this being if Toto wants to keep George alongside Max if Max was to sign for 2026. But that'll likely not happen now. But who even knows at this point? The summer break is coming up, so it's going to be summer slop time from the YouTube channels because, well, there's nothing to talk about at the minute, is there? Actually, there is one thing that these clickbait YouTube channels could talk about. I might even have to do this video myself because I don't think anybody's talked about it. Did you know that Kimi Räikkönen almost bankrupted a Formula 1 team? So then, a look at the rumour mills surrounding Max Verstappen and Fred Vasseur being closed the F down, much to the delight of quite literally a few people. If this video has made you think some stuff and consider the choices made by the individuals mentioned, then do give the video a like so I know a good job was done. And for any other stuff from this channel, get subscribed and also get the bell on so you never miss out on anything else that I do around here. Massive thanks as ever go out to the mad lads over at Patreon who continue to support me at a more personal level, and if you want to help with the picture purchasing piggy bank or otherwise keep the lights on, there's a link to Patreon in the description, as well as links to Discord, socials, affiliates and any other bits and bobs you might want or need to know. Or there's super thanks if you just want to do a one and done donation, and memberships so you can do Patreon without the Patreon. So until next time, I've been Aidan Millward, have a great day wherever you are, and goodbye.